Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 316th episode of Real Hawk Talk. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter at HawkBlogger. And this is a celebratory show today. We are getting the Seahawks schedule officially official. It will be released at 5 o'clock Pacific time, 8 o'clock Eastern time. But I am 99.9% sure I already know the schedule and will be going over it as if we already know the schedule. Before we do, let me bring in the crew. It's so fun. After doing all these shows every day, it becomes so much more fun to be able to have these Real Hawk Talk shows on Wednesday with you guys. So first, Dana Gorman is back at Dana OG. Dana, you were across the pond. So this is are you reacclimating to the time change and all that stuff back here?
Yeah, it is good. Yeah, my family and I went over to England for a week and got to go to a soccer game, which either you love or hate. People, I don't want to hear about it, but I love it. So it was really nice. The weather was beautiful and it was great. And then got back late Monday. So Tuesday at work was a little rough. But yeah, for the most part, it's great. And we're lucky we get to go over there pretty regularly. We have some friends live there. And so, but it's always great. It's kind of a second home for us. So
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
Well, I'm glad you got to see a game and travel with fam. That's always good stuff. Jeff Simmons, I know that we are stealing you away pregame from a big softball match. How are you doing?
I'm all right, man. I'm all right. Yeah, Wednesdays in the summer are my softball nights. So
What's your game in softball? Are you the speedster, top of the order guy, just stealing every extra base?
absolutely not. I am a bad runner. Have been my whole life. I'm a first baseman. I have a very strong glove, a very bad arm. I would not have good arm strength as a quarterback, and I have a good bat. I can hit singles. I can hit for power, but very high IQ, but very slow. I get a lot of pinch runners.
Well, we'll test that IQ in the hour ahead as we get into the Seahawks schedule. And I don't know how much you guys have, gotten into the schedule as it stands, but I did a show this morning and we already got the entire home schedule leaked, and then we got a bunch of the other games leaked, and then other teams' games against the Seahawks got leaked, and there's only a few that were out question. And our pal Softy corrected me on one mistake on something that I guessed that was wrong, but I'm pretty sure everything else on the schedule that I shared this morning is accurate. And so what I wanted to do is a couple things. One, we're going to take some Patreon questions, but we're going to push some of those a little bit later. And we're going to actually go through game by game of what I believe the schedule is and get your reactions to it. I do want to call out that there is a troublemaker in chat. He is bald and should have, if he's got time enough to make comments in chat, he should have time enough to be on the show. But, he's got to go do his little butt kissing at work, and I get it. They pay him a lot more than I do. But yes, let's get into the schedule as it stands. And you know what, guys? I feel like I've betrayed the promise to all of our audience that we do absolutely no prep for this show. I ended up going ahead and creating a little visual aid for our walkthrough the schedule. And let me make sure I've got it up properly. Here we go. Are you guys able to see that? So I thought it might be fun for us to kind of talk game by game through some of the storylines and some of the insights about these games. So week 1, we know, is home against the Broncos. It looks very likely that they will be facing a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix in that game. And maybe not, but that's my expectation. And maybe one of the most unlikable head coaches in the NFL at this point in Sean Payton. Talk to me when you guys heard about this, what your thoughts are about this game. Jeff, I'll start with you.
To me, as ideal of an opener as you could have gotten. Some people want like a more exciting matchup. Some looked at this as like, oh, we got the dud game. I want to play the bad quarterbacks right off the bat. And maybe Bo Nix will not be bad, but what Mike McDonald can do is he can confuse the crap out of a quarterback. And getting Denver, who has probably the least firepower, maybe of any team on offense, with probably a rookie quarterback in his first game, to me, it's the most ideal opener that they could have asked for. I'm sure some people would rather have a more fun matchup, but I want to face Bo Nix. That to me is like, if I could have scripted an opener for the Seahawks, that would probably be it. So I was pretty pumped about that.
Yeah, Dana, how about you?
Yeah, I'm the same. You know how much I hate Sean Payton. I really, really to my core dislike him. And so getting to embarrass him week 1 with his brand new rookie quarterback who is going to have to deal with the noise of Seattle, because I do think that, we talked about over the years how we feel like the noise there has kind of calmed down. It's not as loud as it used to be. People are excited again. People are happy again, right? And they're ready to go, and they're going to prove to Coach McDonald that they can be loud again. And so this kid's going to have to deal with that. And so really either that or week 2, the Patriots or the Broncos, that was a perfect home opener. And I think that is great. The interesting thing here is I think that as much as I don't like Sean Payton, you have to respect what he can do. I just don't think he has the team to do it. So I think this will give us a good glimpse on what we can expect from this team, how they have. I mean, God forbid we opened with the Lions or something horrible where we couldn't, actually take time to see what they were trying to do. So we'll actually let them get their feet wet and get this kind of game plan rolling over these first couple of weeks. But I'm with Jeff. I love this for Seattle. I think it's probably a perfect opener.
Yeah, I I agree with both of you. And generally, I've found, and my instincts were that when the Seahawks start with a win, things are generally good. It's as silly as it sounds. The Seahawks starting 1-0 is a good thing in my recollection. And so I actually went through and I went through and checked on some of these stats. And
I'm so proud.
A couple notes here. So the Seahawks are 8-1 in their last 9 home openers. This interestingly will be the first rookie QB to ever start his first game week 1 at Seattle. This has never happened before in the entire franchise's history. No other rookie quarterback in the first game of the season made their first start in Seattle. So that's going to be a tough place. Bo Nix he's played in Washington, so he's familiar with the Northwest, but it's a little different there when you're going to Lumen Field. The last rookie quarterback that even started his first game, it wasn't week 1, it was week 8 in Seattle, was in 1989. Billy Joe Tolliver, who also had Washington connections, was the last one to get a start there. And all time, no matter what week or what point, the Seahawks are 6-2 versus rookie QBs in getting their first start. So I went over it a little bit this morning, but the Seahawks historically have had very good seasons when they start out 1-0. We'll talk about week 2 in a second, but their seasons get even better when they start out 2-0. Any additional thoughts? Anything jump out to you guys here before we move on to week 2?
This would have been the Russ versus Seahawks rematch had Sean Payton not given him shut him the door. So it'll be interesting. Ryan Grubb had some big games against Bo Nix last year. So getting a very familiar matchup, must be fun for him.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out. And to Dana's point, I wouldn't say it's a soft landing for the defense, but it's at least not the hardest landing for the defense. And it'll be a good test. And as I think someone in chat was mentioning, I mean, Bo Nix might be older than Russ. He's an old dude for a rookie. All right, let's talk about week 2. Week 2, Seahawks are going on the road. So they're going between home and road, and they're going to New England, Do you think that they're going to face their second rookie quarterback in as many weeks, or do you think Jacoby Brissett gets the start? Jeff, I'll start with you on that one.
That was going to be my point. This might be Jacoby Brissett, because one of the reasons some people like Drake May as a landing spot in New England is because their offensive skill positions are awful. They don't really have a left tackle. So this was a year that people thought they could sit him out for a lot of the year, and that was why they signed Brissett. In week 2, unless May lights the world on fire in training camp, I actually think this is going to be Brissett and not May. And I think eventually by maybe like week 6, once they probably start like 1-5, the fans are going to be calling for May. I think I know a lot of rookie quarterbacks have started now, but they don't have a left tackle. Their wide receiver group is scary. And if you're going to ease them in, I don't know if you want them starting a lot this year.
Scary as in not good.
Yes. They have basically a whole crew of wide receiver 3s.
Yeah. Dana, do you hope that the Seahawks are facing Jacoby Brissett, or do you hope that the Seahawks are facing Drake May?
Not really sure it matters, right? Because I like Jacoby Brissett. I think he's a fantastic bridge quarterback. I like Jacoby Brissett, but he's not someone who sets the world on fire, right? And so really then you have to look at, we could be facing a rookie quarterback, but more importantly, we're facing a rookie head coach. This is the first time Mayo is going to be coaching. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens in week 1 with them, what the changes have been made. I mean, we've had nothing but, Billy B for a really long time up there. So it could look very different in New England. But I think that obviously we're going to know pretty quickly in training camp who's going to win that job. So definitely it shouldn't be too big of a question. But I think it's going to be more interesting to watch Mayo as a head coach and rookie head coach against rookie head coach. But I just feel like there's more question marks in New England. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, and if you don't recognize the receiver in here, this is Jalen Polk of the Huskies, who was drafted by the Pats. And I was kind of curious. I'm just looking this up now, but yeah, the Patriots were 29th in the NFL in pass blocking via PFF. So I think that's and they didn't really strengthen that position. You could argue it got worse.
It got worse. They lost Trent Brown.
Right. So that has the potential to be a good opportunity for the defense to gain some confidence for maybe the second straight week against either a rookie quarterback for the second straight week or Jacoby Brissett, who's okay, but does not have a lot to work with and is certainly not a type of quarterback that can lift a team on his back. So a couple things that I wanted to call out here that you may or may not know. The Pats, this is going to be their home opener. So they're playing on the road in week 1. And they are 1-2 in home openers post Brady. I don't know why I said Pats 1-2 in home, 1-2 in home. That's a new way of speaking. But, everyone makes mistakes. But they're 1-2 in home openers since Tom Brady left is the correct way to read that. As Dana pointed out, Gerard Mayo, this is the first time there has been a coach for a Pats home opener since Pete Carroll in 1999. So odd little, loop there for Seattle fans. And then just getting back to what this team was last year, the Patriots were 27th in DVOA, 29th in offense, 9th in defense. And I wanted to call that out. And additionally, this last thing, the Pats had 5 defenders with PFF grades of 80 or better last year. Seattle only had 2. So I think one thing to be aware of with this matchup, as much as we spend a lot of time talking about the quarterbacks and the receivers and the offensive line, this defense was pretty darn good last year, especially in the second half of the year. Any thoughts or any insights that you guys want to add or reactions there?
Even adding to that, they had a lot of injuries on defense last year. Christian Gonzalez, the first-round corner, was really good at the beginning of the season. He was a guy that some people were talking about early in the year for Defensive Rookie of the Year. He got hurt for the whole season, I think week 5 or 6. And I think their best edge guy, I think it was Matt Judon. He missed most of the season too. So they have both those guys coming back. They signed a lot of their free agents who people thought would walk back. So they actually have pretty good personnel on defense. If this was Pete Carroll coaching, this would be the most predictable 13-10 game. Now that we have Mike McDonald and Grubb, who knows? But this would be, I'd be a lot more nervous about this if the Pete Carroll ball played slow. That game would look a lot different, I think, if Pete was coaching.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is the game where we learn a little bit about Ryan Grubb and about Scott Huff and whether they are going to make this offense meaningfully better than it was last year or not. And I think we'll learn a little bit about this offensive line. This could be Christian Haynes' first road start if he's a starting guard. You know, we don't know what's going to happen on the interior line. It could be Olu Oluwatimi's first career road start as a center. So I don't think it's the worst place to play. New England is not the loudest stadium, and they're not that excited about this team. So I think it's a pretty soft opener, road opener, and a soft home opener back-to-back weeks. You agree with that, Dana?
I do, and that's the interesting thing here. When I looked at this schedule, there could not have been a better situation for all of these brand new coaches in Seattle to be able to really get their scheme and their game plan and everything together, because they could focus on that instead of, we have this big, huge opponent or opening against the Niners or something crazy that would distract. These are two games where you can really get your game plan in, get their feet wet, get it, deep in the turf and learn how to play it, because the offense against this good defense will be fine. That the offense, even with a new, offensive coordinator, these are guys who've played together. We can trust them. We know how it's going to go. But especially for this defense, I think it's going to be those first 2 weeks that's leading them into a tougher game, week 3. It gives them that opportunity to feel really secure in what they've planned.
Yeah, and I didn't include the stat here because I did it in the morning show, but I should have included it, and I have to double check this, so I may be a little bit off. But I believe when the Seahawks have started 2-0, they've only had one losing season. I think it was in 1994, and they have won the division most of the time. Now that's a big stretch this year, and certainly I wouldn't jump to that conclusion, but historically, when the Seahawks have started 2-0, they're in for 10 plus wins. They're in for division challenging types of seasons. And the NFL has given them the best possible chance. I don't know if you could have asked for a better way to start 2-0 or a chance to start 2-0 than what the NFL gave. I don't think there's a lot to complain about. We'll talk about it, but I think the NFL did the Seahawks a lot of favors this year. I wish it was in a year when they were really contenders and they could really, it really mattered, but still it's nice compared to last year where there was just some brutal, awful things for the Seahawks. I think this is a lot better. All right. So next let's talk about week 3. Dana's favorite coach. I know how much you like Mike McDaniel, Dana.
I'm sorry. Hipster homebrewer.
Hipster homebrewer.
That's what you got to call him.
You've got a lot of storylines in this one.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, I think, going to be his first time facing the Seahawks. I don't think the Seahawks have faced a Mike McDaniel team. And you've got Jordan Brooks, who went to Miami. You've got Jerome Baker, who came to Seattle. I think something that people have probably forgotten about. You've got Jalen Ramsey and DK Metcalf, one of the best shows on the field. And if people don't remember or didn't see, there was a kid who tried to troll DK Metcalf this offseason about Jalen Ramsey being his daddy. And DK confronted the kid in front of like all his friends. We're going to get to see that renewed. And then you got Tyreek Hill. You got so many things there. So, Jeff, what stands out for you about this matchup?
I love the Ramsey DK call out. I didn't even think about that. But this is going to be a fascinating game because if you remember Mike McDonald's first year as the Ravens D coordinator, they had some tough times early. And one thing that they were exposed on is they had a big learning curve adjusting to that scheme. And they played the Dolphins early in the year. And when Tua was just getting going with McDaniel, and they absolutely smashed them. And there were calls in Baltimore to fire Mike McDonald. They were saying this guy was a bust. And so given what the Ravens had on defense, they had some good players, Matabuke and Hamilton. They didn't have Roquan Smith quite yet. So it's going to be really interesting to watch them go up against McDonald beat McDaniel pretty good last year in that matchup. And that was one of the big games for him. But to watch Miami, who's probably the fastest team in the league, the teams that have given Seattle trouble in the last decade has been more of the powerful teams. These guys are not a power team. Their speed is electric. Jalen Waddle is one of the fastest receivers in the league. Tyreek Hill is the fastest player on offense. So to watch them go up against Witherspoon and Moulin, I think that's such an interesting game. And then Brooks and Baker thing, where each side is thrilled that the other side got each of them. It's sort of the revenge game for both. But I think McDaniel versus McDonald, and whether they can make the adjustments this early in the year, they couldn't in year one of McDonald in Baltimore. So let's see if this gets a little better in Seattle.
Dan, I'm going to show a couple stats in a second about Miami on the road and Miami in different conditions. The fact that this game is in Seattle, what would your guess be this far in advance? Who do you think will be favored in this game?
I think it will depend on how soundly Seattle beats the first two teams. If they manage to do that, then I think they'll be favored. Otherwise, I think it'll probably be pretty dead even. Here's the interesting thing. Thank God Seattle doesn't have to go to Miami week 3, because I don't know if you guys have ever been to a Miami game in September. It's 100 degrees. It's brutal. It's just disaster. So this is A, huge for that. B, the other thing I saw a lot on Twitter about this game was everyone's like, oh, Jordan Brooks is going to give him all this information and da-da-da. He has no information to give. They have nothing. He can't tell him anything. He's never played for this coach or this coaching staff. So I need people to remember that, because it cracks me up every time I read it.
And the Seahawks have Jerome Baker, who's been playing on that team.
And that's what I was going to say. If you want to talk about, who's got the upper hand, definitely Seattle on that one. So I think that, I have actually really kind of grown to like Hipster Homebrewer. I think he's kind of goofy, and, I like those kind of coaches. But at the same time, I think that you guys are absolutely right. Mike McDonald, there's too many Micks in this.
I know. Mike Micks around.
Right. Too many of them.
It's a lot.
And McDaniel, McDonald, McCarthy, it's too many. But anyway, I think that McDonald has had the upper edge with these type of teams. We've seen it from them. So I think that Seattle should be favored. Now, if they go in and completely make a disaster out of the first two, who knows at that point? But I think that with them playing in Seattle, not in the heat of Miami, and with the way Mike McDonald has normally played these type of teams, I think Seattle should have the edge. I would hope, but who knows?
Jeff, I saw you kind of perk up when I mentioned who is going to be favored. What do you think the chances are that the Seahawks will be favored in the first 3 games of the season?
I think pretty low in this game. I just think Miami is a team. They generate a lot of buzz in off season. They're a team that's built for early season football. I saw like a graphic online the other day on Twitter. It was like, what can stop this offense? They listed all the players, and someone tweeted out the weather. That's honestly perfect. They had to play the Chiefs in that freezing cold game last year, and it basically made their offense useless. And so September, with a new coach on defense and new personnel, I do think Miami will be favored. I don't think it'll be a huge line. But I think Miami, just the way they play, it really, there's a lot of, they're just comfortable. There's not a lot of adjustment there. It's the same players. They added Odell Beckham. They're going to be getting a lot of hype. So I think pretty low that they're.
Did you just say they added Odell Beckham? Like that means anything?
No, I said they're going to be getting a lot of hype.
Yeah.
Okay.
I use my words very carefully. Yeah. I use my words very carefully.
I will say the last time the Seahawks started 3-0 to start a season. Do you guys want to guess? Any guesses?
2013?
It's a good guess. More
15,
recent.
Yeah, it was like 16 or 17, maybe.
Actually, 2020. They
started
really? 4-0 in 2020.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of hard to believe. It was just 4 years ago. This team was 12-4 and won a division. It feels like a lot longer than 2020.
Well, we have people.
In the years that the Seahawks have started 3-0, I'm double checking, but I think in each of these cases they won at least 10 games. Just double checking here real quick. So far, so good. Oop, 1998. Oh, hold on. Yeah, that's all right. Anyway, so generally speaking, it's a good thing for the Seahawks. Not surprisingly, to start a season with 3 straight wins. A couple facts here. So the Dolphins actually are pretty darn good in road openers recently. They're 3-0. And a couple notes from a schedule perspective, the Dolphins are going to have extra rest because they're playing Thursday night football in week 2. So before they make this trip, they're going to have an extra couple days. This will be the first time Seahawks fans will have a chance to even watch the Dolphins play in almost a decade in Seattle. 2016 was the last time. The Seahawks won that game 12-10. Sounds like a fun one. And Miami all-time is 2-3 in Seattle, but they are 6-3 in their last 9 West Coast trips. So this idea that the Dolphins maybe going to the West Coast, they're just not going to be good. History hasn't proven that to be the case. Now, every different year, different coaches, different teams, so who knows? But historically, that hasn't been such a big deal. But this last one is the one that Jeff was talking about. Miami, including the playoffs, is 4-12 in their last 16 games played in temperatures under 60 degrees. So this is a team that it will be week 3, and everyone's like, oh, that's still going to be September. It'll be fine. As someone who's gone to every Seahawks game for like since 1997, it starts in week 1, sunny, and everyone's wearing shorts. By like week 3, everyone's wearing sweaters and sweatshirts. So I don't think it's crazy to think it's going to be below 60 by the 3rd week of September when the Seahawks play them. We'll see if that matters, but something to monitor. I thought that was a good point you brought up, Jeff. All right, week 4. We've got the Lions in Detroit, and it's a Monday night football game. Couple things here. Terry and Arnold and Reckenstraw, they've really remade that secondary in Detroit. It's a huge part of what they've done this offseason. They added Marcus Davenport as defensive end. What are your thoughts on this game, Jeff?
2 of the best games the Seahawks have played in the last 2 years have been in Detroit. Last year was the one where both tackles were out, and we all thought they'd lose by 30 points, and they beat them in overtime. And so for whatever reason, the Seahawks have had really good success. Gino's numbers indoors are really, really good. Gino's numbers are all of the best games he's had as a Seahawk have all been in indoor stadiums. So someone pointed that out to me last year, and the numbers are crazy, the splits. But man, the Lions really addressed an area Seattle's really been able to take advantage of, is they have not been able to cover our receivers. DK Metcalf had torched them a couple times. So I think the Lions are due to beat us in one of these games. We've had such good back and forth games. And I think there was a pick 6 last year from Brian's buddy, Trey Brown, that really swung that game. And I think the Seattle, again, indoors against the Lions, that's a game that could be really, really good for their offense. But I don't think we'll get this one for the 3rd time in a row.
Dana, any thoughts for you on this matchup?
Yeah, this one is going to be a serious test. Let's just put it that way. I do think the Dolphins will be a test without question, but this is football style versus same football style, right? They're going to beat the ever-loving tar out of each other. And so here's the interesting thing about this. I have absolutely loved what the Lions have done for their team for the last 3 years. It is exactly how I would want a Seattle team to be built. I love it. So when this draft came through, you could just see they knew exactly what they needed to fix and exactly how to do it, and they did it. So I think that the Lions, I have them winning a lot of games this season, and I think that this is going to be a true hard test for our new coaching staff because I think they're going to run through everybody.
I love that assessment, and I also just think it's worth pointing out this is Seahawks maybe coaching candidate 1 versus Seahawks coaching candidate 2.
Oh,
Mike McDonald versus Ben Johnson. And Mike McDonald absolutely trashed the Lions last year. They embarrassed the Lions. That was in Baltimore, different defense.
Mm-hmm.
But the Lions, just like the Seahawks, looked like they had no answers for Mike McDonald in that game. So I'm going to be curious to see. In fact, I put some numbers together here. Some of these stuff you guys have already talked about. Before I get into these, Jeff, you look like you were going to say something about that matchup.
So that point you just brought up something interesting on the other side of the spectrum. If you want to watch two of the worst games the Seahawks defense have played, put on the two Lions game. There's a game. If you want to watch like bad Clint Hurt film, and I assume nobody does, Jamal Williams ran for like a 50-yard touchdown. That was a game where like Julian Love like looked like he couldn't cover anyone, and Kobe Bryant the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really interesting point because those have been shootouts, and because of it, like their defense was awful in those two games. They looked like both points were like, this is the worst defense I've ever seen. And if McDonald can be that, like what we could think he can do, this matchup might look a lot different.
Yeah, and I think one of the things to call out, the Seahawks not only beat them last year, and I think, Jeff, you kind of mentioned this, but they beat them in Detroit with Jake Curhan and Stone Forsythe as the two tackles. I mean, I can't express how wild. That's still one of the most bizarre outcomes I've ever seen. Neither one of those guys are good. And to go into a legitimate Super Bowl contending team last year and win with those guys both starting, I think is crazy, especially when your defense is not playing well. So it was really one of the most unlikely outcomes. It is worth just saying the Lions have not had a good track record against the Seahawks. And there is just something about franchises kind of getting the better of one another, right? We've seen it both directions for Seattle, the Rams, all the stuff that we've seen. But Lions have lost 6 straight to Seattle and 9 out of 10. We mentioned this as well. 2 of Geno Smith's 4 road games as a Seahawks, where he's had 300 yards passing and 2+ TDs, have come in Detroit. He's only had 4 of those in his 2 years in Seattle. 2 of them have come in Detroit. And the Lions are 1-3 in their last 4 Monday Night Football games. 2 of those were at home. 2 of them were on the road. The one win did come at home, so they're 1-1 there. But part of what I think we reacted to last year is they're coming off of beating the Chiefs on the road, and we were so injured and just thought they were going to roll. And the crowd was going to be so into it. They were, and they still lost. So this is a game the Seahawks should lose again. I don't know. Like this is not the toughest game on the schedule. It's probably one of the top 5 or 6 toughest games. But I don't think this team is like, there's no way they can beat them, because they've proven, even with worse talent before, they've been able to win this game. All right, let's keep moving, because I know we got to get through a lot, and we're halfway through, and we still got Patreon questions even after all this. So I'll stay on and answer some questions if we don't get to as many tonight. Week 5, at home against the Giants. You got the worst quarterback room in the NFL coming to Seattle, traveling across the country. Drew Lock. Okay, first question, Dana. Will Drew Lock or Daniel Jones be the starter for this game?
Who the hell knows? Right? That's
you gotta guess.
No.
You gotta guess.
I think Drew Lock will probably start. I think I don't know. Daniel Jones is so terrible, and they know it. But here's what I find interesting about this game. This is the second team that we will play that will be coming off Thursday Night Football. So once again, they will have an extra few days of rest. But they have to play the Cowboys. So Seattle is sandwiched between the Giants-Cowboys game and the Giants-Bengals game. I don't think they're going to be too overly concerned with Seattle at that point. So I think that this could be probably one of the most fun games for Seattle fans, just like every time we play the Giants. But if I'm being totally honest, I really do think Drew Lock ends up starting over Daniel Jones. But they paid that guy so much money. Maybe they feel like they have to start him. I don't know. I don't know. I just know that this team did not get any better in the
Is there a goofier looking quarterback duo, Jeff? I mean, can you imagine like, oh, Daniel Jones, he looks like he's just totally overwhelmed. Let's turn to the backup. And it's Drew Lock.
Brian, we've talked about this before, but I really subscribe to the dumb face theory. And if you have a dumb face, like I just can't believe in you. And that picture you have here is just picture perfect because they probably both have two of the plainest, dumbest faces I've ever seen. And nothing against those guys, but
that's a little bit against those guys.
Okay, fully against those guys. It's not like they can control it though. They just have that dumb face.
Yeah.
And like Nathaniel Hackett had it. Shane Waldron kind of had it. The plain dumb face. Like there's no Josh McDaniels kind of had it. Like find me a successful quarterback other than Eli Manning, who is the outlier of all outliers, that has the dumb face. And these two are the league leaders. And so the fact that they're in the quarterback room together is perfect.
Yeah.
It's like you have Daniel Jones like looking over Locke's shoulder right now. It's this weird dynamic. Brian Dable's on the hot seat. He's turned into a bit of a lunatic.
Yeah.
They could unravel this year. This team could really unravel.
Well, it's also one of the cool things in the schedule is the Seahawks have a chance to face a number of the rookie quarterbacks that went. And then there's also a number of these rookie receivers, right? They're going to get to face Roma Dunze. They're going to get to face Malik Neighbors. They're going to get to face Marvin Harrison Jr. So I think there's a lot of like new faces that'll be fun to look at in these games. A couple notes on this game. The Giants, again, another team that's getting extra rest before they play Seattle, the second team in the first 5 weeks. So as Dana said, they'll be coming off a Dallas Thursday night game. New York has lost last 2 and 6 of their last 7 to the Seahawks. Their last 5 losses are by a combined score of 136-40. None of the games have been closer than 14 points that the Seahawks have beaten them. So it hasn't been close. It hasn't even been competitive. Their offensive line was awful last year. The Seahawks looked like the Legion of Boom in New York last year. And then they went into Cincinnati and played really well against Burrow, and you thought something was happening. Turns out, no. But I will admit, the last time the Giants beat the Seahawks was the infamous paper bag game. That was the first game where I pulled out the paper bag for post-game show after Colt McCoy beat the Seahawks in Seattle in 2020. This was the season that they started off 3-0 or 4-0 and were 12-4 and won a division, but lost to Colt McCoy at home. So beware. We can make fun of all these guys as much as we want. Colt McCoy did beat us at home. All right, let's keep moving. Week 6. Our favorite losers. The San Francisco 49ers. I tried to gather as many images of them walking off the field. I was going to have the confetti falling down. 49ers at home on Thursday Night Football. A couple notes that I want to share with you guys before we get into this. 49ers do play the Chiefs and Cowboys after Seattle, so this may be a game that they're looking past a little bit. I want to make sure people remember that San Francisco has not won a Super Bowl since Windows 95 was released. Kyle Shanahan has blown 10-plus point leads in 3 straight Super Bowls, and the 49ers fans lead the NFL in stabbings, although this is an unofficial stat, but something that people should know about the 49ers and be prepared for as we get ready for this game. All right, folks, this is it. Week 6, another Thursday night game. It's not Thanksgiving this time. How do we feel about this game? Any other thoughts, Dana, that you'd want to share about this one?
So this is one thing about this schedule that really struck me. Seattle plays all their division opponents at home before they have to play any of them away. All 3 of them, they play in Seattle first. And I thought that was really interesting. I don't know that it'll make a difference, but it's an odd scheduling quirk that they would get to face all 3 of these opponents at home. I think it's good. They get San Francisco at home, Thursday Night Football. The crowd will be there. They'll be loud. I still don't see there's any way in hell they're going to win, but you never know. Miracles happen.
Jeff?
This is going to be a really interesting game because one of the reasons Pete Carroll was ultimately let go was just Kyle Shanahan just ran circles around him the last couple of years, especially on defense, which is supposed to be his bread and butter. They invested all those resources to try to keep up with the 49ers. And we were at that Thanksgiving game. They weren't even close. And I just hope they don't wear those green jerseys this time. I think maybe the blue ones, the old school retro ones, maybe show those off. Those match those 49er colors pretty cool. But this is where I think we're going to learn a lot about Mike McDaniel. Mike McDonald. Sorry, I got that wrong. Mike McDonald against Shanahan was the game that really put the guy on the national stage. That game was so cool on Christmas Eve last year. And McDonald made Brock Purdy look stupid. And he threw 4 interceptions, and they own them. And this is the first time we're going to see them at home, which is going to look totally different, I think, than what Pete Carroll running that same thing where you just have their guys running free in the middle of the field, and it looks the same thing over and over. This is what Mike McDonald was hired for. And so usually I'd be just dreading the 49ers. And again, this is a year I don't expect the Seahawks to contend. I don't think they're going to be a contender. I think it's a development year. So a game like this, I'd be typically super nervous for. Now I'm just far more interested to see how the matchup stacks up. And hopefully Brock Purdy has a terrible year and Christian McCaffrey sucks this year and Deebo Samuel demands a trade. But I think this is where we're going to learn. It's 5 weeks into the year. We should be through that adjustment phase. I think we're going to learn a lot about Mike McDonald in this game.
Yeah, all great points. And I think the piece, as much as I'm always bullish, I will just call out that the Seahawks started off pretty strong last year, and there was this big matchup game in Baltimore where it was like, okay, I remember listening to the Athletic podcast where Ben Solak and Nate Tice or whoever they were just talking about how this is a great matchup and Gino's going to have a good matchup and a good game. And we all know like the season never recovered from that game. So this is about that time where the Seahawks could be kind of maybe playing well because of the way the season started, even maybe get a big win in Detroit like they did last year. And maybe they're better than we thought. This is a game that's going to be a reckoning. And we're going to find out it's a measuring stick game for sure. And just like it was when Jim Harbaugh was there and the Seahawks couldn't beat them for a while. And then there was that 1 year, 2012, where they destroyed them in the second half of the year and they never looked back. The 49ers are the measuring stick. So important game. We'll see what comes of that. Thursday night football will be interesting to watch. Week 7. Seahawks travel to Atlanta to face the Falcons. A lot of interesting storylines here. You've got Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix. You've got Braylon Trice, another Husky. I didn't remember this, but the Falcons double dipped in Huskies with Penix and Braylon Trice. You got Bijan Robinson getting his first game against the Seahawks. This is in Atlanta. A couple of notes here, and then I'll let you guys share your thoughts. Falcons were 28th in DVOA last year, and they were bad on offense and on defense. They were 5-3 at home, though. So even though they were a really bad team, they managed to be pretty decent at home. To Jeff's point, this is another indoor game, so that might be something that's beneficial for Gino. But they're going from Desmond Ridder, who was 26th in the NFL in passer rating, to Kirk Cousins, who was 3rd in the NFL in passer rating. I don't know if there's a bigger upgrade at quarterback anywhere in the league. Even Chicago, I would say, does not have as much of an upgrade as what they're going to see in Atlanta. Another point here, Cousins threw 6 more touchdowns in 8 games than Ridder threw in 15. So just a very, very different Atlanta offense. I don't know how much different their defense is, though. Jeff, thoughts on this game?
Yeah, it's interesting because they have an entirely new coaching staff too, where they brought in a bunch of guys from the Rams. Raheem Morris, who knows Seattle really well. Their new offensive coordinator was the quarterback coach with the Rams. So there's a big learning curve coming from them too. They have an entirely new coaching staff. I was shocked at your show the other day, Brian, when they got such high grades with their drafting, because generally the consensus is they've actually screwed up their drafting and they've taken all skill players and avoided basically all the trench play. And so I didn't necessarily agree with that, but I think this game has potential to have a shootout. And if Cousins, who's coming off an Achilles, by the way, at his age, if he's going by week 7 and Geno in an indoor stadium and their defense did not, like, if they were going to draft Penix, the big argument is they should have just spent that money on Christian Wilkins or something like that and given the $100 million to their defense. And other than guys they spent on the draft, they've done very little to address their defense. So this game has shootout potential. It's going to be a hard place to win if Seattle's defense is not up to as good as we think they are. But I think this is a game where Geno could be a monster. And this could be a really fun, underrated game. It's unfortunate that Kirk Cousins was signed, because if this was Penix, that would be such an awesome, maybe the highlight of the year. So I think this is a game where Geno, if he's going to be the guy in Seattle, if he wants to be the guy to like maintain this job, he needs to have a big game in this spot.
Dana, we've talked about, I don't think we think the Seahawks are contending for much, but this game to me feels like if you want to be a playoff team in the NFC, if you want to be one of the top half of the NFC, this is a team you got to beat.
I agree. We have to keep one thing in mind, though. The Falcons are in a very similar situation to Seattle, is we don't know what we're going to get with them, right? We don't know what to expect from this team with a new coaching staff and a new quarterback. I mean, we know what to expect out of Kirk Cousins, but in a different scheme. And so there are some question marks surrounding them. They do have some talent on this team that was never utilized before. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. However, we always say by week 5 to 6, you know who a team is. And so that'll be very beneficial to Seattle, because then they'll be able to go ahead and prepare a little bit better for this team. But I think that you're right. If Seattle expects to flip this around in a year to 2 or 1 to 2 seasons, this is a game they have to win.
All right, let's keep moving. We're into week 8 against the Bills at home. So Josh Allen, Ed Oliver I have here. There's also this interesting thing. I missed it in the last one, but there's going to be a little bit of a tour around Byron Murphy comps. Grady Jarrett with Atlanta, someone that a lot of people compare Byron Murphy to. Ed Oliver's another person that a lot of people compare Byron Murphy to. And then maybe the most likable guy that's not a Seahawk out there, Keon Coleman, the rookie receiver. The Bills lost a lot of talent. Tre'Davious White, Mitch Morse, Jordan Poyer, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis. They were 12th in defensive DVOA last year, and I think they might be going the wrong direction. I don't know that there's a good case to be made that their defense will be better this year. And it's the first time they've been in Seattle since 2020. First games against Seattle since 2020. Their first time in Seattle since 2016. And this is only the second game for Josh Allen against the Seahawks. The only time he played the Seahawks, he threw for 415 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and rushed for 1 in a 44-34 win in Buffalo. Dana, thoughts here?
I think as much as it breaks my heart, because I do like the Bills, I think that their window has we only got like an inch left of the opening in the window, right? I think that this team is in a major shift and not up. And so it'll be interesting to see how they recover from all of these losses. They don't really have much in the way of wide receivers. Their offense is questionable, and not Josh Allen. I like Josh Allen. I freaking obsessed with, is it Coleman?
Young Coleman, yeah.
God, I love that kid so much. He's awesome. And I think that's what that fan base needed. It was something to be happy about, and he's definitely provided that. The interesting thing, though, I can see where this type of team could give McDonald some trouble, but I just don't think they're the threat that they used to be.
Jeff, what about you? I mean, I look at the Bills. I generally chalk it up as a loss, whether it's home or away, because Josh Allen's just that good. But what do you think about this game?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a closer game than people probably think. And again, this is a game that if Pete was coaching, I'd be like, oh boy. They always lose to the guys like this where he just makes like a million spectacular plays. But the Bills are really having a reset year. And I guess we thought that Chiefs were last year too, but they've lost. They had a lot of bad contracts, a lot of older players, and they basically scrapped them out. If you look at like what their receiving core is in Buffalo right now, I can read it to you. It's Curtis Samuel, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Keon Coleman, and Chase Claypool. So that is not Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, and those other complimentary guys. This is basically the Josh Allen show. They have Kincaid, the tight end that some of us liked in the draft last year. They're going to have to learn to play differently. And they, unlike the Chiefs, who really invested their resources into defense, Buffalo did not. And they actually lost, as the graphic shows here. They lost both their safeties. They lost some linebackers. They lost some depth. They have guys coming off injury. Tre'Davious White had to be released. They were in cap problems. And really the only players they've added on defense are like Cole Bishop. And that might be it. So they do not have the personnel they have on offense or on defense. So this is a game I think it's going to be really fun. If you're going to go to a Seahawks game this year, this is probably the one to go to just to watch Josh Allen. But this is not the team from 2020 that broke that Seahawks season, that just owned them. A, they don't have Brian Daboll anymore. And B, this is going to be Josh Allen and a bunch of guys. And this is going to be the hardest season of his career. There's a lot of Jags on that team now. And if McDonald is the kind of guy he was as defensive coordinator and they slow that offense down a little, this could be a game Seattle could actually blow them out. So I don't think they will. But they could if the Bills do not have, with those receivers, and they don't have the kind of offense that they've had. And if they are like Baltimore and they're able to confuse a quarterback like they were able to last year, there's a chance of it. It's unlikely, extremely unlikely, but the Bills are not who they were 2 years ago.
Yeah. No, I think that's interesting. All right, let's keep moving. I know we're going to lose Jeff here in a little bit. I want to get as many games in before he turns into a pumpkin. Week 9, first game against the Rams. So we will get a lot of games in before we get this second divisional game. And this is at home against the Rams. So back-to-back home games. Rams have made a ton of additions. And so I'll talk here. As much as we just talked about who the Bills lost, the Rams signed Jonah Jackson, the top guard on the market, Cameron Curl, the safety, Tre'Davious White, who they got from Buffalo, Darius Williams, the corner. So they got 2 new corners, Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. They drafted Cam Kinchins, the new safety from Miami, Brennan Jackson, the defensive end from Washington State. They had, as far as I'm concerned, the best offseason between draft and free agency of any team in the NFL. And they were already pretty decent last year. They were just one spot behind the Seahawks in DVOA. And they were 6 spots ahead of the Seahawks on defense, even though the defense was their weak spot last year. And they made a fair number of improvements. They lost Aaron Donald, but it is worth calling out that as much as Mike McDonald has done great things against every offensive coordinator, Sean McVay and Matt Stafford put up 31 points and 410 yards versus the Ravens last year. They lost, but it wasn't because the offense didn't produce. Any thoughts from you on this one, Jeff?
I was going to ask you, would you rather have all those guys on the list or Aaron Donald?
I think I'd rather have all those guys on the list.
Okay. Well, the fact that it's a question is telling of how great Aaron Donald is. But I think you're probably right. But really with the Rams, like the Rams own us. And it's unfortunate. We'll see if it's a McVay, Pete Carroll thing. But you're right. McVay and the Rams went into Baltimore last year, took them to overtime. I think it took like a punt return for them to win that game. They had the best success against Mike McDonald's defense than anyone. And that was on the road in bad weather. So what the Rams really did at the end of last year is they became a power running team. And that's why they put so much investment in Jonah Jackson, who can just make their offensive line into an even bigger strength where they kick Avila inside. So until I actually see the Seahawks prove me wrong, I just assume we're going to lose to the Rams time and time again. We'll learn if that was a Pete Carroll thing or not, but unfortunately, I'm with you, Brian. I think they've had a great offseason. I think they're a Super Bowl contender. And unless Matt Stafford just falls off a cliff or gets injured, I was not thrilled to see them make so many good decisions this offseason, even when they lost the best player in the world. But I have to assume every time we're going to lose to the Rams.
Dana.
Yeah, people have been talking about the NFC West, and there's been a lot of conversation about the Cardinals and how much they've improved and how good the Cardinals are going to go. And I just laugh. I'm like, did you see what the Rams did? For God's sake, we are hosed against this team. They are so good, and it's not a slam against Seattle. It's the way they put that team together has always been the perfect, antidote for whatever Seattle tries to give them. And it's been frustrating, but it's not just McVay. I mean, God, this goes clear back to Jeff Fisher, right? The Rams have been a pain in the ass for forever. And so I think that they had probably the best offseason. They have just murdered it. And it's not going to get easier. And that's the first of 3 divisional games in a row for Seattle. And it's hard. Yeah, this is now the game that I'm going to dread.
Yeah, I'm not dreading any games because I'm just curious now. That's kind of my mindset. I'm just curious. And I will, in the season, I will feel differently. But right now, I'm just curious. All right. Week 10, bye week. Yay. And we won't have comments on that other than nice to have a mid-season bye week. It's been a long time. The Seahawks get screwed with bye week. So moving on to week 10, after the bye, the Seahawks play the 49ers. Jeff, did you see these headlines? I thought they were worth calling out about the 49ers.
Oh, man, I didn't remember that happening, especially the overtime rules. Kyle Shanahan's so stubborn, he still thinks he made the right decision. I think the worst part of this game is for the beat writers who cover the Seahawks. They're going to have to sit with David Lombardi for 3 hours and watch him celebrate and take his shirt off in the press box. So that guy is Grant Cohn deserves a shout out, man. I love that he's going.
I love that guy. Yeah, he'll be back on.
Yeah, I guess he'll probably fly over for the Thursday night game. So maybe my take is stupid, but oh God, I hate that stadium. I went there. I went to the old stadium once, and it was the worst experience I've ever had watching a sport. I felt like I was at a place where they're actually preparing for a war. I will never go to a San Francisco home game the rest of my life. And the thought of this game just bothers me. So, Dana, hopefully you can pick me up here.
No, I can't. It's just
Dana, you may not know, but even since the last time we talked about the 49ers, they still have not won a Super Bowl in 30 years. I will want to make note that San Francisco will have played at Tampa Bay the week prior, so they'll be coming back from across country, and they're going to be going to Green Bay and Buffalo on the road in the weeks that follow. So that's 3 cross country trips essentially. I know Green Bay's not quite, but you get it. With the Seahawks game, the one home game in between all of that. So I think that that's an advantageous thing for Seattle. I also want to point out, I mean, as bizarre as it was, the 49ers only led Drew Lock by 5 points heading into the fourth quarter in San Francisco last year. So who knows? Geno Smith was leading the 49ers in the first half of the playoff game in San Francisco. For 3 quarters, they were ahead in that game before they got blown out. But who knows? Stranger things have happened. Maybe Trent Williams will be out by then. Maybe, Nick Bosa will be arraigned in court. Who knows? Like, something could happen.
When's the election? Is Nick Bosa going to be campaigning?
Let's not talk politics.
All right. Sorry.
I'm not going to talk politics.
Here's the thing. Anything is possible.
Anything's possible. All right. So that is the last game against the 49ers.
Thank God.
And then this is for Josh Cashman. This is the quarterback Josh Cashman's a big fan of. I just want to make sure everyone's clear on that. Kyler Murray is one of Cashman's favorite quarterbacks. LJ Collier. This is the LJ Collier DJ Dallas revenge game. But we will get to see Marvin Harrison Jr. So, Jeff, any thoughts here about this Cardinals matchup at home in Week 12?
Everyone hyping up. Obviously, I think Marvin Harrison is the best prospect in this draft. But everyone's like, oh my God, Arizona has a receiver. They just had DeAndre Hopkins in his peak. And what were they, a 9-win team? And obviously, I think Marvin's upside is much better. I think he has skills that Hopkins can never have. But they're like, oh my God, they have Marvin Harrison Jr. They had DeAndre Hopkins and with Kyler Murray. And there's just so much groupthink in the NFL media and the draft complex. And everyone's like, oh my God, the Cardinals had the best draft. And I see our friend Mina Kimes doing this and Field Yates. And I'm like, is everyone in Bizarro World or something? I didn't like their draft at all. Obviously, Marvin Harrison. So I look at their defensive line and I see a team that's just a couple years away. And I don't think they did nearly enough to address that with all that capital. And so unless Kyler Murray proves me completely wrong, I still think Arizona's kind of the same as what they've been. I think their ceiling is a 9-win team. I think they played really hard last year, but I think over time the talent tends to win out, and they spent like high picks on backup running back and a backup tight end. And I'm not at the point where I'm like, oh my God, Arizona is like the 2012 Seahawks. I don't know. I'm not scared of them at all. I still think their ceiling is like 8 wins. And so I think this is a game where this is like a mid team against a lower mid team. Like I couldn't get excited about the Cardinals at all. And I know Josh Cashman will be at this game with a Kyler Murray jersey, but we got to have Dana versus Josh talking quarterback height on a show or something. But I don't know. I still think the Cardinals are kind of goofy. I'm not scared of them. And if this comes out and I'm wrong, you guys can own me for this, but I'm calling everyone out tonight. So whatever. Well, Cardinals are going to be a bust.
It's funny, Dana. The Cardinals are one of those weird matchups with the Seahawks where they end up being a little bit better in Seattle than they are at home in Arizona.
They are.
It's not that they win more, or like they win. They're not a winning team here, but they do win a little bit more than they do at home. And this was the 32nd ranked defense in DVOA, and everyone's talking about the offense, but the defense was atrocious. And I don't think I think Darius Robinson's maybe their big addition, their first round pick. I'm not super high on him, and I don't think he's a major difference maker. So for me, the Cardinals are still very clearly the 4th team in this division. A lot of people disagree with that. I'm curious, any thoughts for you about this matchup in week 12?
So I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. I think this is the year that the talent that they have brought in gets Kyler Murray fired. I think that they're going to have to admit, even though they brought in, these players to support him, and we can, the narrative's always been that he hasn't had any talent around him, which we all know is BS. I think this finally gets him fired. And I also think that's interesting that the couple of Arizona players that I was able to interview or the draftees at the draft, these are high intelligence, high football. Like, they are such good guys. They're not going to put up with this kid's BS, because honest to God, you just hear that about Kyler Murray all the time. And so I think the team will then obviously gravitate. This is what they're looking for. So this is not your job's on the line, Kyler Murray. If you can't get this done now, and then you're not going to. And I think that then he would probably end up getting fired. I'm with Jeff. I am not worried about the Cardinals at all, other than that they're a divisional opponent, which is always a little bit more difficult. But I don't see the huge gains that they've made that are anywhere near what the Rams have done. So this one doesn't bother me either.
Dana, can we just take a second to just remind people why they follow and like and subscribe to this channel? The schedule was just released, and we're in week 12 already. And by the way, nailed it. Absolutely hit every game. So you've not missed anything. In fact, you are 12 weeks ahead of every other show by tuning in here, because you already know what the schedule is for being a Real Hawk Talk, Hawk Blogger Morning subscriber. Good reminder. Go ahead, click like, click subscribe, and become a YouTube member. If you haven't already, the link is pinned in the chat and it's in the description of the video. And become a Patreon member, patreon.com/hawkblogger. You get all the audio versions of the Hawk Blogger Morning podcast. And you get to ask us questions each week, which we will get to. Some of them, most of them, I think are going to come tomorrow morning. So let's keep plowing through the schedule.
Okay.
Week 13, your favorite quarterback, Dana, Aaron Rodgers. Look at that face. How could you not love that face? Just the arrogant frown. And Sauce Gardner, who a lot of folks, there's a little rivalry between Sauce Gardner and Tariq Woolen. A couple notes on this game. The Jets will be coming off a bye week. This game is in New York again. This team was ranked 25th in DVOA last year, 32nd on offense, 5th in special teams, but 3rd on defense. Like elite defense, especially when you've got the worst offense in football and you still are finishing 3rd. They may have had the best defense in football last year. Worth noting, Aaron Rodgers will be, if not 41, right around his birthday when this game starts. The Jets have lost 5 straight to the Seahawks, including 23-6 last year. They have not scored more than 17 points versus Seattle since 2004.
Jesus.
So it's been a long road for the Jets. Curious, any thoughts that you have about this game with New York?
What's the over-under that Aaron Rodgers isn't injured and out for the season by this point? Because I don't see him lasting long. And I'm not being rude. I'm not wishing injury on anyone. Well, I might have said privately that I wouldn't mind seeing San Francisco truck him a couple of times in that first game. But it's true. But at the same time, let's just talk law of averages at 41. Not everyone is Tom Brady, guys. And so this does get very, very difficult. So I'm wondering how long he'll even make it into the season. And again, I'm not wishing harm on anyone, so I don't want to hear crap about that. But here's the interesting thing. This team is good. They should be good. I think that's why Saleh was so frustrated last year. He knew what he was missing. He needed a quarterback. He replaced the quarterback. The quarterback made it 12th place, right? And so it was very frustrating to him. So if all things fall together, the Jets should be a pretty good team. It just is going to depend at this point how badly injuries have stacked up for them, because they get just snake bit every year.
I think it's the right thing to focus on, because you don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to be there by week 13. I think that's the biggest question mark. I misspoke and miswrote in here, so I want to correct myself. It was 2022, not last year. It was 2022 that the Seahawks last played the Jets and beat them 23-6. In that game, if people are curious, Geno Smith was 18 for 29 for just 183 yards. He did throw for 2 touchdowns, had no interceptions, but he was sacked 4 times. Kenneth Walker ran for 133 yards in that game, including a 60-yarder. And even DJ Dallas ran for 43 yards. So that was a rushing-oriented game for the Seahawks. They put up 198 yards on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a good defense even 2 years ago. So this will be in New York, but the Seahawks have historically played pretty well in New York, whether it's the Giants or the Jets. So we'll see about that. This game is impossible to know until you get there, but you have to expect defense is going to play a big role. This is a defense for the Jets that could even sustain a few injuries and still be very elite. So I think that's going to be an interesting one for Ryan Grubb. We got the Cardinals again in week 14 at Arizona, and their defensive coach, who actually still had the 32nd ranked defense in football. Seahawks have typically played pretty well in Arizona. I assume this is going to be a popular one for Seahawks fans to go to. It always is. Easy, cheap trip. And at this point, it's going to be during the winter months where everyone wants to get down to Arizona. So I think there's going to be a lot of Seahawks fans in the stadium for this one. If you have any thoughts, welcome to it. But
I was just going to say, we have played Arizona as the last game of the season for so long. I was really surprised to not see it again. Do you know what I mean? Like, it seems like that's the season ender is always Arizona lately. Now this year it's the Rams, but it kind of surprised me. I'm like, oh, and week 18. Oh no, look at that.
I know.
Yeah.
And the Seahawks just have won. People I know that everyone talks about the curse and the injuries and all that kind of stuff. For me, Arizona is generally a very positive memory because the Seahawks just almost always win down there. A lot of that, Russ was very good in that stadium for the most part, but so was Marshawn. But just in general, the Seahawks have done well down there. So week 15, we're in the final part of the schedule here. They play at home against the Packers. And an interesting thing here, Dana, this is a Sunday night football game. I believe. I don't have that on here, but I think it's a Sunday night football game. I will double check. Let me do my quick check. Yes, it is. Yes, I just didn't put it on this slide for some reason. Anyway, so it's a Sunday night football game. And a couple things here. Obviously, Jordan Love broke out as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in the last part of last year. They drafted Javon Bullard, who's one of my favorite players in this draft, and Edgerrin Cooper, one of the top linebackers in this draft, to try to help a defense that was already improving. And a couple notes. This will be the Packers coming off 2 straight Thursday night football games. They'll be playing Miami at home for Thanksgiving, and then they're going to travel to Detroit. But they will have extra rest before this game. but that's 3 straight primetime games for the Packers, 2 of which against teams that they're certainly going to be more focused on than the Seahawks. And then they're going to have to travel across the country and play in a Sunday night football game. The other thing of note here is while the Packers have beaten Seattle in 4 of the last 5 games, all 4 of those games were in Green Bay. The last time they played in Seattle, they lost. Any thoughts here about the Packers matchup in Week 15?
This division is going to be brutal. They are going to, really, really beat up on each other. And I think that that's going to be good for everyone who plays them. And I think the Packers are better team than a lot of people give them credit for. I think that I know that people focus and say, oh, they did well and they got to the playoffs, they did this, that, and the other. But I really think the team is well put together. And Jordan Love is an impressive quarterback. And that pains me to say because I don't like those quarterbacks. But I think that this could be a tough game for Seattle, even though it's in Seattle. And we always say everything's shiny on paper because obviously we don't know what injuries and all the other stuff is going to happen. But I do think that this could be a really tough one. And yet, traditionally, Seattle does well in primetime games, or Pete did well in primetime games. And so that's the new kind of norm we're going to have to figure out.
Yeah. This is another, this is a legitimate Super Bowl contender. One of the youngest teams in the NFL and one of the best teams in the NFL. I will say, as much as my general assumption is this team is on the come because they've got so much talent. They're so young. They're going to grow. They're just going to get better. That makes all the sense in the world. They are young. So the variance for this team could be higher. Jordan Love, maybe he's not quite as great as he was at the end of last year. Maybe people figure something out. You never know. And so there is some variance with this team. The fact that it's later in the season, the Seahawks will have a lot of idea of what they're going to face, and they're going to have a lot of time to, prepare for this team. And being a Sunday night football game gives the Seahawks a decent shot at home, assuming that it still stays Sunday night. This, again, at this time, it could get flexed, but let's assume it stays currently. Could have playoff implications for sure. NFC game. Then the Seahawks get their second straight game at home, and they will get the Vikings. You get J.J. McCarthy, speaking of big, goofy quarterbacks, and maybe the best wide receiver duo in the NFL, or at least it's right up there in Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. Now, the Vikings have a lot of things to be aware of. It's not necessarily the team it was even just last year when Cousins was playing. They will be coming off of, and that should say off of, sorry, I spent too much time working on this today and did some wonderful typos, but we'll be coming off of 3 straight home games, including their last game will have been against the Bears. So a divisional game, big matchup before they then travel across country to Seattle. So I think that plays a role in this. Then they'll be going to play Green Bay and Detroit in the following 2 weeks. So the Seahawks game is sandwiched in between 3 divisional games for the Vikings. I think it's an easy game for them to overlook, for them to not be as prepared for. Also, the Vikings have lost 6 of the last 7 against the Seahawks, 5 straight in Seattle. And this could be, again, most likely another rookie quarterback that they'll be facing. Any thoughts for you, Dana, on this matchup?
So what's interesting to me is we have to look at overall, did the Vikings get better, right? I mean, I know they lost Kirk Cousins last year, and that was a huge problem for them, but are they a different team than before? Are they a worse team without Kirk Cousins? I would say yes. We don't know what to expect out of J.J. McCarthy. But I think that the interesting thing here is that it's the 3rd rookie quarterback, right? I do think that Seattle really lucked out in their scheduling this year with all these baby quarterbacks they had to deal with, right? And so we have to hope that the secondary can handle the 2 wide receivers, and they're both so good, who keep threatening to leave their team. Let's keep that in mind too, right? And so I think this will be interesting. I think depending on how the defense develops over time, I think they could win this game. I really do think they could win this game from what I'm seeing, but it's all going to depend on how that defense develops.
Yeah, I would expect the Seahawks to be pretty clear favorites in this game.
I think so.
I I think the rookie quarterback, I maybe this will be the latest opportunity for me to learn something by being very wrong. I don't think JJ McCarthy is going to be the guy that it has a great rookie season or that strikes fear in your heart. He has let's put it this way. If he can't have a strong rookie season with the receiving core that he has and the coaching staff that he has, it doesn't bode well for him. And even so, even if he plays okay, I just think the Seahawks are a better team. And I think they're gonna be coached well, and they'll be at home for this game. So I like the Seahawks' chances. This is one of the ones that I would say 60 to 70% at least chance that the Seahawks win this game. Now, final 2 weeks, the Seahawks go on the road for both of these games. Week 17, another NFC North matchup. They visit their old buddy Shane Waldron and their old buddy Roma Dunze from University of Washington, and then Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick and another rookie quarterback. He might be unlike the other rookie quarterbacks, but this is going to be a Thursday night football game in Chicago. I'm looking forward to this one, Dana. I mean, this is going to be a fun one. Worth noting that the Bears are going to be coming off a big divisional game versus Detroit the week before. The Bears have won their last 2 against the Seahawks and road teams. This is going to be the furthest the Seahawks have traveled for a Thursday night game. The last time they traveled any real distance was Dallas. They've done that twice. But in general, their Thursday night away games are against San Francisco or against LA. I think it's worth just knowing that's a much larger difference of a trip than what they've done before. And in general, the road teams do not do well on Thursday night football. So I think this is a pretty tough matchup for the Seahawks, even if the Bears are not the most talented team that they'll face. Curious if you have any thoughts about this game.
Well, my thoughts are on this quarterback. I told you I was not a fan of his after the draft. But here's the interesting thing. I can see the hype around the Bears getting better, first overall pick. They have this golden child in a quarterback, and then Roma Dunze, who is actually, really good player. But look at the rest of that team. Is there enough there to make the huge flip that they have from what they've had? I don't hate Justin Fields, so I don't really think that that's it. But here's the thing. I think that all of the knocks against Seattle, being the road trip, having to go so far, I don't think that's enough to give Chicago a huge. This kid is not CJ Stroud. I just don't see it. And so I think that Seattle should win this game if you just look at talent by talent. Now, by week 17, everything factors, including the weather in Chicago. We cannot forget that, right? But it's going to factor for the other team too. Seattle's not afraid to play in the cold. And so even if it's a snowball, even if there's, so much, weather, it's not going to matter. So I'm not afraid of Chicago. Chicago's going to have to prove a lot to me by week 17 for me to be nervous about this game.
That's interesting, Dana. You seem a lot more confident about this than I am. I don't think that you're wrong about a lot of those things. You also think about when this game will be, week 17. It's going to be like January, late December. I think it's right after Christmas or something around there. It's probably going to be 20 degrees and snowing, which could be fun to watch.
Yeah. Does that bother Seattle though? They playing cold?
I think on a short week,
maybe
having your body have to recover and play in the cold weather. I just think this is a tough game. Now, I'm not complaining because I think pretty much every possible advantage the Seahawks could have gotten with the schedule to this point, they've gotten. But this is the one game where it's like when it is in terms of this calendar, when it is in terms of the week, how far it is in terms of the travel, for me, gives me a little pause about this one being a good setup. I would bet that the Bears win this one.
It's a 4-hour flight. It's a 4-hour flight.
It is.
I fly it all the time. It's a 4-hour flight.
It is.
So it's not like they have to go play in New England. I don't know. I don't know. And by week 17, I could be like, woo, that was an off-season take, Dana. That was terrible. But I don't know. Right now, we'll see.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right. Final game of the season at the Rams. And as Jeff mentioned, just a call out to Aaron Donald and his retirement. I really thought, like, the one thing I got wrong when I was guessing out the schedule was I was sure that it was going to be the Cardinals, kind of like you were saying before, because I think it's really dumb of the NFL. And there's always good reasons for this, but I think it's silly of the NFL to not have the Rams playing the 49ers in week 18, because those are the most likely two teams battling it out for the division. But they have us playing the Rams in LA. LA does not have a real home field advantage. They just have had a coaching advantage, and at times they had a massive talent advantage. But I don't think this is, other than the normal Rams stuff, there's no reason this is a particularly hard place to play at the end of the year versus any other team. Any thoughts you've got here?
No, I have no faith that we can beat them. I'm sorry. By week 18, maybe that will change. You never know. Right now, hell no. We're going to end the season on a loss.
So, Dana, that is all 18 games. I appreciate you kind of going through all of that with me. Mm-hmm. And, Jeff had to go to his softball matchup, but let's you and I talk for a little bit longer, do a little bit of the patron questions, if you're cool with that.
Yep, you bet.
And then we'll do some more of this tomorrow. But overall, how do you feel about that schedule?
I think it's exactly what you said, that the NFL did Seattle some favors, right? Like I'm not saying it's scripted and they did it on purpose, but I'm just saying in general, when you look at it, they gave them a nice, easy beginning against some teams that they should be able to beat. They have their really harder games separated out. I think that you mentioned this on Twitter. We don't have that gauntlet that they had to run last year. Those games where you just were hitting a brick wall game after game after game. There seems to be a little more wiggle room in this. And it's probably just because the teams that they're playing, I think Seattle is like 4th or 5th from the bottom in, toughness of schedule, because the Steelers and the Ravens and all those guys have to play each other. And so they're right at the top. But I like the way that this is set up. I like that there's not some big, huge East Coast, run for them. So I think that when you look at it overall, set up very nicely for a rookie head coach and a rookie staff. And I think that, the only big thing is you have those 3 divisional games in a row, but you have a bye week in the middle. So I'm as a fan, pretty happy with the way this worked out.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is, for the most part, as advantageous as this schedule could have been for the Seahawks. And while, if you don't mind checking a look at the Patreon questions, we pull those up, patreon.com/hawkblogger. You too can ask us questions each week. We'll take a few of them. We're not going to take a ton, because I'll do some more tomorrow morning on Hot Blogger Mornings. But I do want to give a quick shout. If you liked that presentation at all and the designs, call out to my old buddies at Adobe. I was using Adobe Express, product that I helped start back in the day and has grown up quite nicely. You can use it on the web at express.adobe.com, and I think it's still free to use for the most part, unless you want to get certain things cost to access. But I had fun creating that. It's pretty easy to do, and I think the designs are pretty good. So if you like that, give Adobe Express a shot. And if you're on the Adobe Express team, kudos. Thanks for keeping it going after I left. All right. Dana, what do we got?
I'm ready. Okay, this first one is from Marcel. It says, with Seattle seemingly dropping/winning one game for no apparent reason every year, which game do you think will be likely to be won or lost in a classic Seahawks fashion?
Oops. 1 second, Dana. I think I lost you.
Oh.
Let's try it again. Can you say something one more time?
Yeah. I can hear you just
I can
fine.
hear you.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Right. Sorry. I lost my AirPods have been getting too much use. They're a
No
little
problem.
stressed
That's right.
out. So which game do I think is the one that they're going to lose that they shouldn't?
Win and lost in the most classic Seahawks way.
All right. I'd love your answer on this too. I think that the classic Seattle kind of loss could definitely, I mean, the worst case would be early in the season against like the Patriots. I would hate to see that, but it is early and it's their first road game. I kind of go more toward one of the Cardinals games, like the Cardinals at home in Seattle. That's a game that I can see them dropping that they shouldn't. How about you?
For the most classic Seahawks ones, probably the Lions. Like they'll pull it out at the end, like they always do. It seems against that game. For the loss, just not or playing down to competition because that seems to happen with them. I think could probably be like the Falcons for some reason. It's like, why did they lose this game? It makes no sense.
As far as games that they might win that I wouldn't have expected them to, I feel like I'm going to keep saying it till it happens. I just feel like they're going to snag one of these 49ers games.
Oh my God, that'd be amazing.
I just think that it's going to happen at some point. So let's see. I'm going to share my screen just so we have this going on while we're doing it. People can look at the lovely designs from
ooh, look at that.
The Seahawks. This is their version of the schedule. So you can see.
That feels very Marshawn Lynch for some reason to me. I don't know why.
Yes, but there you go. So you can look at that while we're answering our Patreon questions.
All right, cool. All right, so the next one, I'm sticking now for those of you who wrote in Patreon questions, I'm sticking to the ones that are more about the schedule. The other questions Brian will grab tomorrow, just so you guys know. This one's from Brundon. What is the one non-divisional opponent you want to see Seattle beat the most? And is there one game you feel is an absolute lock for a loss?
What's your answer there, Dana?
So the one non-divisional game I absolutely want them to win the most is against the Broncos. I hate Sean Payton that much. I'm just letting you guys know that. Or the Jets, one or the other, the two evils, right? We got to deal with that for sure. And lock for loss, definitely one of the Rams games. I have no faith in that. So sorry.
Yeah, non-divisional games that I want them to win the most. I mean, my head says the most important one is the Falcons game. I really do think that that's a linchpin game for the way the Seahawks are going to, end up in this year. But I don't care that much other than I just logically know that game's going to matter. I think the Jets game, I would really like to beat that team. Especially, I'd love Aaron Rodgers to play, and I'd love to beat him. Like that would taste so good.
It'd be delicious.
Oh,
it would be
so good. And to, hopefully throw a touchdown or two on Sauce Gardner and Reek Willing gets an interception or two. And we just got a lot of content out of that game. Would be fun.
So Mark Zuck asked, he says, a Niners question for Dana. With Purdy up for a big contract extension next year, what is the likelihood of him getting Shanahan this season? High. Very high. All of a sudden, he's going to be broken and they won't have to pay him as much. I'm telling you, that team. All right. So, let's see. Sorry. Okay. This is from Dustin. I'm taking my kids to a road game this year. What city on the schedule would the crew recommend taking into consideration? Time of year, screw Buffalo in the winter. It says, well, Buffalo's playing in Seattle, but yeah. So which I have been to a lot of away games. Brian, which one is your favorite?
Well, on this schedule, I mean, I think that the Rams in January is not bad if you're going to, LA. I also think, as I said, I really like going to the Arizona games.
Yeah, me too.
I think the pregame is nice. There's good bars and restaurants. It's pretty family friendly if you're bringing your kids. The fans are not that into it. I mean, they will cheer loudly, but they're not super intense fans that are going to intimidate you or make you feel crappy for wearing Seahawks gear. So I think those are two games. I think a lot of people are going to want to go to the Chicago game. I haven't been to Soldier Field, so especially the new Soldier Field. So I would bet that's, if you don't want to go to Buffalo in the winter, I wouldn't want to go to Chicago either. But those are the ones that kind of jump out to me. How about you, Dana?
I I've been to a couple. I've been to an away soccer game and an away football game in Atlanta, and it's actually not bad. In
Yeah.
Atlanta, that time of year, October 20th, that's going to be beautiful, and there's a ton to do there. So if you're looking for a little mini vacation where you can go and do other things, Atlanta is a great city. But I'm going to tell you guys this: I preach it to the top of the hill. Maybe not with kids, but if we ever play at the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans, go. And has nothing to do with Bourbon Street. It has everything to do with that atmosphere in that stadium. It is a blast, and they love away fans. So that's
I 100% agree.
Yep.
That's definitely a place I love to go. And I will second you on Atlanta. I haven't been to a game there, but great food there, fun city, underrated city in the States. So that's a great suggestion.
For sure. I love Atlanta. Okay. Let me see. This is from Chris. Of the year 2 and 3 guys, who do you think makes the jump from contributor to Pro Bowl or All Pro?
Year 2 or 3 guys.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me pull up to make sure. I mean, I know the 2022 class, but let me make sure that I get all of those guys here. So we're talking about Charles Cross will be going into year 3. Oh, we're just talking about the last 2 drafts, 2022, 2023. Yep. Got it. Okay. And the question is, who's going to make the biggest leap to be a Pro Bowler or an All Pro?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I'm still buying Devin Witherspoon. He was just a Pro Bowler last year, and I really like the fit with Mike McDonald. I think it is not unrealistic that he is an All Pro. I think that his potential to be in Defensive Player of the Year should, like, if things are going the way they should be, then he should be in the conversation for that, even if just for some point of the season. Jackson Smith-Njigba should be so much better this year, so much better utilized, so much better overall. So I think he's a great one. I'm going to do a show upcoming, and I haven't done the research yet, so I don't know what the answer is, but I think there's a question that's worth asking about whether Zach Charbonnet or Kenneth Walker is the better back. And everyone's going to laugh, but I've done some research, and there's reason to think that Zach Charbonnet still has more to offer than I think people fully realize. And then, I mean, Mike Morris, again, all these guys are 23 guys. Mike Morris did not play at all. I'm super bullish on him. I don't think he's going to be an All Pro, but if we're talking simply about who could be a Pro Bowler or an All Pro, I think JSN could jump to that level. I'll just say the person that would be most important, Dana, Charles Cross.
Yes, I was thinking the line.
If Charles Cross can make that jump under Huff and Grubb's tutelage, nothing would be more important for this team than if he could become a Pro Bowl level left tackle.
I was thinking the same thing. And I was thinking the same thing about Abe Lucas after his knee and the time they took to get that fix. Like, that could be huge for Seattle if they can get either one of those guys to really make the next step instead of, it wasn't really a regression last year, but it wasn't anything new, right? So it's like, it'll be interesting to see what they come up with.
Yeah.
That'll be a good one. All right. So that's kind of the last schedule related. There's a couple more about scheme. There's a great one from Kane about, I'm sorry, hold on. This one is from Matt G. If you can steal one personality trait from your other co-host to make you a better fan. You'll have to do that one on your show, but that's pretty much the last one for the schedule.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for everybody for putting in your Patreon questions. I will get to the ones we didn't answer tomorrow morning on Hawk Blogger Mornings. For now, that's 90 minutes on the full Seahawks schedule with details and insights that I guarantee you're not going to get anywhere else, and probably will get retweeted other places. So hopefully you all enjoyed that. Dana, thank you so much for coming on early with us tonight after just coming back from international travel. And that's Dana O'Gorman at Dana OG on Twitter. That was also Jeff Simmons at Real Jeff Simmons, who had to leave just a little bit ago, but gave us a lot of great insights, and we'll definitely have him on again pretty soon. But for now, we're going to say goodnight. Thank you all for tuning in. Please give the show a like and click subscribe. Join as a YouTube member. The link is pinned in chat and in the description of the video, as well as join as a Patreon member, patreon.com/hawkblogger. You get access to all the audio versions of the podcast outside of the Real Hawk Talk. So all the Hawk Blogger Mornings, all the emergency pods, all that fun stuff. And you get access to the Slack channel where there's a lot of great conversation that keeps going on. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Dana, thank you again. I hope you have a great night.
You too.
All right.